Chapter 619. The Phoenix Emperor walked out of the side hall. Huang Minga was still standing there. She didn't dare to leave. She was waiting for a result. She didn't know what the result would be. To be on the safe side, she even secretly sent someone to the inviting Phoenix Palace to invite her father over. If the Empress was too angry, her father should be able to console her, right? The Phoenix Emperor looked at her eighth daughter, who was standing respectfully. For the first time, she felt that she had never seen through her. Among all her children other than Chang'e, Minga was the one she doted on the most. She was born in a noble family and knew how to act spoiled. She looked sweet and pleasant. Whenever she got something good, she would remember to leave a portion for her daughter. She always thought that Huang Minga was still the innocent little girl in her memory. But no little girl would send a knife into her own sister's body. Moreover, what did she say to Chang'e that day? What made Chang'e reveal such a pained and hateful expression when she heard her name? She didn't speak for a long time. This made Huang Minga even more nervous. No matter how mature and shrewd she was only a 14-year-old girl. She felt that Huang Chang'e must have said something bad about her to the Empress. If it were him who encountered such a situation, he would probably cut the other party into 1,000 pieces before he would be satisfied. She said nervously to the Phoenix Emperor, "Empress Mother, I know that sister must be very angry with me now. It's reasonable for her to want to kill me. But right now she's just angry." She suddenly couldn't continue speaking because she was looking at the Phoenix Emperor's half-smiling face. Looking carefully, there was a trace of mockery and pity. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly? The Phoenix Emperor pitied her eldest daughter Chang'e. She couldn't bear to hurt Huang Minga even though she had been hurt. But this girl in front of her didn't understand her sister's good intentions at all. She didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, she was trying to absolve herself. She said slowly, "Chang'e said that you're still young. She's afraid that you've been deceived by evil people. She said that you should find a teacher to teach you." Huang Minga felt a boom in her head. She thought to herself, "I'm done for." Perhaps the Empress Mother would not blame him for his sister's sake, but her impression of him in her heart had dropped to the lowest point. What would the Empress think of a daughter who didn't feel the slightest bit of remorse for stabbing her elder sister, and even tried to exonerate herself? Huang Minga felt that it must be Huang Chang'e. She must know what she would do, so she pretended to be magnanimous and said those words. She had fallen into her trap without knowing the reason, and was despised by the Empress. She had never thought about what she should do if she really felt guilty. The Phoenix Monarch did not misjudge her at all. She was such a selfish person. "His Royal Highness is here." Following the palace servant's voice, the Lord of the Phoenix in a luxurious robe walked in. The imperial concubine was a man as elegant as bamboo. He seemed to be in a hurry. When he saw the imperial concubine, he did not even have the time to bow and hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, are you going to blame Minga?" When the Phoenix Emperor heard this, he turned his head to look at the pale Feng Minga and smiled faintly. "Your Highness, you worry too much. I just went to see Chang'e. She is very protective of Minga." The imperial concubine was relieved when he heard this. Only then did he realize that he had overstepped his boundaries. He was about to apologize when he heard the Phoenix Emperor's words. "Minga is not young anymore. I plan to find a day to open a residence for her, and find a good teacher to teach her well." Huang Minga looked at the Phoenix Emperor in disbelief. Was he giving up on her? Chapter 620. The princes and princesses of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty all lived in the palace unless they got married. Some of the favored princesses could even continue to live in the palace after they got married. She was only 14 years old, and was let out of the palace in advance. It was tantamount to the Phoenix Queen telling the world that she didn't like her daughter. What kind of future would he have in the future if he was like this? She looked to the Phoenix Lord for help. The Phoenix Lord couldn't bear to let her go. His eldest daughter had been taught by the Phoenix Queen since she was young, and moved to Clear Phoenix Palace after she turned 14. Although they were close, she wasn't as caring as his youngest daughter. He couldn't accept the Phoenix Queen's order. But before he could say anything, the Phoenix Queen said, Have you ever thought that you have another daughter who is lying in my heavenly phoenix palace and almost didn't wake up? The Phoenix Lord didn't say anything. Both were his own flesh and blood. Moreover, his youngest daughter had gone too far this time. The Phoenix Lord glanced at his youngest daughter and his eyes dimmed. Your Majesty, I heard that Chang'e has woken up. I want to see her. The Phoenix Queen naturally allowed it. The Phoenix Lord's usually high-spirited eldest daughter was now lying in bed pale and weak. He wanted to ask her to plead for his youngest daughter, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. He could only comfort Gu Xingyin and tell her to take good care of herself. Then he took Huang Minga back to Inviting Phoenix Palace. No one knew what the Phoenix Lord and the 8th Prince talked about in Inviting Phoenix Palace. They only knew that the usually gentle His Royal Highness lost his temper that day, and even smashed his cup. In short, neither the Phoenix Queen nor the Phoenix Lord saw the 8th Prince off on the day he left the palace. Gu Xingyin smiled. How could a person who could become the Phoenix Lord and remain in favor for so many years be easy to deal with? Huang Minga's little tricks were nothing in front of the Phoenix Lord. And as the Phoenix Lord, he knew which of his 2 daughters was the guarantee of his honor in the future. He would never allow anyone to try to destroy or shake Huang Chang'e's position, even if it was his youngest daughter. Huang Minga's life had been going too smoothly. Hence, she was a little smart and felt that she was unparalleled in the world. Gu Xingyin was going to wait and see. She was going to wait until she lost everything she relied on, bit by bit. When that happened, what else would she use to fight against her? Gu Xingyin was finally allowed to move after recuperating for half a month. After recuperating for another half a month, the imperial physician said that there were no major problems with her daily activities. She just needed to be more careful. The first thing she did was to ask the Phoenix to move out of Heavenly Phoenix Palace. We'll talk about it after you've recovered, the Phoenix Emperor said without even raising her head. Gu Xingyin tugged on the Phoenix Emperor's sleeve, not allowing her to continue writing. The Phoenix Emperor raised his head helplessly. Ever since his eldest daughter was injured, she had become more and more clingy and coquettish. Although it was a good feeling, what about the dignity of the Crown Prince? The Phoenix Emperor said in a sweet voice. Forget it. Chang'e was still the noble Crown Prince in front of the other officials. If she was only like this in front of the Phoenix Emperor, it wouldn't be a big problem. Her Majesty the Phoenix Emperor made such a decision. Children who knew how to act coquettishly and throw tantrums would get candy. This was what Gu Xingyin had learned after completing so many tasks. It turned out that it was really useful. Chapter 621. I've been staying in Heavenly Phoenix Palace for more than half a month. I don't know what the officials outside are saying. Now that I've recovered, please let me move back. The Phoenix Emperor looked at her daughter. Other than her, there was no one else who could make her worry so much. Okay. But I'll let Huan Xian keep an eye on you. You have to stay in the palace during this period of time, and think about other things after you've recovered. Okay. Gu Xingyin moved back to Clear Phoenix Palace the next day. Following that, the Phoenix Emperor released her from confinement in Clear Phoenix Palace. Of course, to the current Gu Xingyin, this order was useless. The Phoenix Emperor really placed Huan Xian, the head steward of the inner court, by Gu Xingyin's side. Aunt Huan Xian, I promised to take medicine on time and take good care of my body. You'd better return to Mother Empress's side. You've served her for so many years. She won't be used to your absence, Gu Xingyin said. Huan Xian smiled. Before this servant came, Her Majesty said that this servant must take care of Your Highness Crown Prince's recovery. Don't worry, Qing Xian is with Her Majesty. Huan Xian and Qing Xian were the most capable aunts by the Phoenix Emperor's side. Gu Xingyin spent another period of time being treated like porcelain. She drank several bowls of tasteless medicine every day, and was watched by everyone in Clear Phoenix Palace. If there was any big movement, they would be so frightened that they would come forward to stop her, for fear that something would happen to her. Fortunately, this body's recovery ability was top-notch. After another half a month, the imperial physician finally announced that His Highness Crown Prince was fine. Gu Xingyin was finally allowed to leave the palace. The first thing she did was to investigate the whereabouts of the people around Shiqingyi. She knew Shiqingyi. This person looked like an otherworldly immortal on the surface, but in reality, he was very ruthless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done something like slandering Huangchanga for having rebellious thoughts. No matter what he did, there would always be loopholes. As expected, after the incident with the crown prince had passed for so long, he probably felt that the situation wasn't so tense anymore, and started to clean up the mess. Originally, there was no need for this. However, during this period of time, the crown prince, who was rumored to have been imprisoned by the Phoenix Emperor, had regained the Phoenix Emperor's favor. This made Shi Qingyi very terrified. He and the crown prince had completely fallen out. Once the crown prince regained power, he would definitely seek him out to settle the score. As long as she can't find any evidence, then I'll deny it no matter what. I'll just say that I found some clues and was worried about my emperor, so I went to report her. This way he could show his loyalty to the Phoenix Emperor. At most, he would be hated by the crown prince. In Phoenix City, Huangchanga did not have the ability to control everything. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to eliminate all future troubles. The first to suffer was Chuanfu, who had grown up with Shi Qingyi since she was a child. As Shi Qingyi's confidant, he knew almost everything about her. In the case of Huangchanga, most of the things were done by him. Chuanfu had grown up with Shi Qingyi, so he knew very well what kind of person Shi Qingyi was. He had long expected that he would be abandoned one day, so he had already chosen a way out for himself. Before Shi Qingyi could make a move, Chuanfu had bribed the servants of Marquis Wenyuan's residence and quietly ran away with some gold, silver, and valuables. Gu Xingyin had already ordered people to keep an eye on Marquis Wenyuan's residence. When Chuanfu ran away, he fell into her trap. Chapter 622. Chuanfu. When Chuanfu saw where he was taken to, his heart was filled with grief. He knew the crown prince. Not only did he know him, but he was also very familiar with him. In fact, he always felt that the crown prince treated his master very well. When his master chose to cooperate with the 8th prince, he even advised him not to do so. Why would his master not be satisfied when he didn't want to be the future empress? Unfortunately, Shi Qingyi didn't listen to him. He was afraid that even if he died 10 times, it wouldn't be enough for what he did with Shi Qingyi. Chuanfu made up his mind and was about to kill himself. Think carefully before you do anything. Gu Xingyin looked at him and said lightly, "The people in the carriage in front of the tea house at the city gate are your wife and your 2-year-old son, right?" Chuanfu suddenly raised his head. He had been very secretive about this matter. How did this person find out? His eyes suddenly became confused. He only felt that the crown prince's voice was very pleasant. "Tell me everything you've done honestly. I promise that if your family didn't participate in this matter, I will keep them safe." Chuanfu unconsciously took these words to heart. He was going to die anyway. If he didn't say anything, his master wouldn't let him go. If he told the truth, the crown prince might promise to keep his family safe. Gu Xingyin quietly waited for his reply. She knew that he would promise her. Sure enough, Chuanfu suddenly raised his head and looked at her. "Your Highness, can you really keep your promise? Can you really keep my wife and son safe?" Gu Xingyin didn't say anything. Bai Xian, who was standing beside her, said, "Who do you think you are? How dare you question our Highness?" Chuanfu shrank back and finally opened his mouth. One by one, it started from his young master's plan to assassinate and rescue. Later, his young master gained Huangchanga's trust and secretly did something in her palace. Finally, he righteously reported it. Shi Qingyi had always been hypocritical towards Huangchanga. After Chuanfu finished speaking, he added, "This lowly one only knew that young master was working with someone else, but that person's identity was very mysterious. This lowly one didn't know her identity until a few days ago." He carefully raised his head and looked at Gu Xingyin. "The person who conspired with my young master is your sister, Her Highness the 8th Princess." The crown prince didn't seem to be as angry as he had imagined. He didn't seem to have much of a reaction when he heard the news. Didn't she have the best relationship with His Highness the 8th Prince? No one would feel good about being betrayed by the person closest to them, right? Chuanfu was puzzled, but he did not dare to ask. "I'll send someone to verify every single word you've said." If there's any falsehood in your words, Chuanfu said hurriedly. If there is any falsehood in my words, I will make sure that I die a horrible death. Men. Gu Xingyin called out loudly. Someone came in from outside. Take him away and watch him carefully. Don't let him suffer any losses. Yes. Gu Xingyin rubbed her eyes tiredly. Bai Xian, who was beside her, quickly came over to give her a massage. She was also a little nervous. It was not suitable for her to know about this kind of thing today. Don't worry. I'm not the kind of person who will get rid of someone once they've outlived their usefulness. Gu Xingyin seemed to know what she was thinking and said lightly. Chapter 623. When Gu Xingyin sent someone to verify Chuanfu's words, the Phoenix Emperor in Heavenly Phoenix Palace also received the news. Your Majesty, do you need me to bring that person here? The leader of the secret guards asked. The Phoenix Emperor's expression turned cold. Changde can handle this kind of thing. You don't need to make a decision on your own. The leader of the secret guard's heart tightened. He replied, yes. So the Emperor's trust in the Crown Prince had reached this level? With the evidence provided by Chuanfu, it was not difficult for the people of Clear Phoenix Palace to find out the truth. Gu Xingyin held the results of the investigation and did not speak for a long time. She went to Heavenly Phoenix Palace in the afternoon. Only this. The Phoenix Emperor looked at the evidence sent by her eldest daughter. The mastermind behind everything was Shichingi, but he was just the son of a minister. Without the help of others, how could he have done this? Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes. Sun only found this. Pa. The Phoenix Emperor slammed the things in her hands on the table. Changde, how did I teach you since you were young? The Phoenix Emperor looked coldly at her eldest daughter, who she had high hopes for. As a ruler, the most taboo thing is to be soft-hearted. This time, I won't argue with you. Whether you really can't find out or don't want to continue investigating, I won't pursue it. I'll do as you wish and end it here. But Changde, this is definitely the last time. Gu Xingyin opened her mouth but did not say anything in the end. She respectfully retreated. The room returned to silence. The Phoenix Emperor closed her eyes tiredly. Bai Xian tactfully came over and gently massaged her shoulders. His Highness the Crown Prince has a pure heart. Your Majesty, this is because you taught him well. The Phoenix Emperor said helplessly. You don't have to speak up for her. I don't believe that she can't see that there's someone behind this. She clearly doesn't want to continue investigating. There were only 3 people in the entire Heavenly Emperor dynasty who could make Changde swallow this pain and still protect them. Fine, this time, I'll do as you wish. You still have hopes for brotherly affection. I won't be the bad guy. I only hope that the person you cherish in your heart can really understand your pains. Or else. Phoenix opened her eyes and a cold glint flashed across her eyes. Let me clear these obstacles for you. Gu Xingyin returned to her Clear Phoenix Palace. System, am I especially bad? Gu Xingyin asked. She clearly knew who the mastermind behind the scenes was, but deliberately pretended that she didn't want to pursue the matter. With the Phoenix Emperor's intelligence, she only needed to make a little deduction to know who she wanted to protect. On the surface, Huang Minge seemed to have escaped the crisis this time. But in reality, in the Phoenix Monarch's heart, she was the one who would never have the chance to rise again. The system replied. In the palace, benevolence and kindness are the most fatal shortcomings. It was already the best that he could do as long as others didn't offend him. Only the Holy Mother, not Gu Xingyin, would be magnanimous enough to forgive and not seek revenge after being hurt. Gu Xingyin also smiled. You're right. I didn't come to this world to reform people. For some people, if you treat them well, they would cherish and be grateful. But for some people, if you treat them well, they would only take it for granted, and would even want to use you to climb up. Gu Xingyin didn't ask the Phoenix Emperor to execute Huang Minge immediately because this time, there was no way to completely destroy her once and for all. Only by disappointing the Phoenix Monarch again. And again would she not be able to obtain a trace of pity and forgiveness the next time she did something. Chapter 624. Marquis Wenyuan's estate. Shichingi saw the tray in the servant's hands. Young master, sure, please. The servant stared at him coldly. Marquis Wenyuan's husband was still struggling. I want to see His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness likes Qingyi very much. He'll be willing to save me. Slap. Marquis Wenyuan couldn't take it anymore and slapped his husband. My husband is possessed. Take him to the backyard and don't go out for a while. Stupid thing. Didn't he see what this vile spawn had done? He had framed His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness was probably going to tear him apart right now. Why would he save him? Marquis Wenyuan had been in a terrible fix recently. Marquis Wenyuan was from the Empress's maiden family and the Crown Prince's maternal family. They were staunch supporters of the Crown Prince. But this idiot of hers, as the future Crown Prince, had actually exposed the Crown Prince's treason. She recalled how her colleagues had looked at her as if she was an idiot when she went to court. She felt ashamed and angry. When she entered the palace, the Royal Highness, who had always been respectful to her, reprimanded her for the first time, saying that she hadn't taught her son well. In any case, Marquis Wenyuan felt that he had lost all face during this time. Now this vile spawn's so-called evidence was actually fake. He actually had the guts to frame His Royal Highness. The moment he heard the servant's secret edict, Marquis Wenyuan hated that his body was so strong that he didn't faint on the spot. It was over. No matter how close Marquis Wenyuan's estate was to the Crown Prince, after this incident, even if this vile spawn came to pay for it with his life, there would be a rift between the two sides. Shi Qingyi stared at the small cup of wine on the tray. He knew what it was. It was something that could take his life. He didn't want to die. He couldn't die. He hadn't enjoyed all the glory and wealth yet. Why should he die? I want to see His Royal Highness. She likes me so much. She dotes on me so much. Yes. She won't let me die. The palace servant coldly stared at him. This eldest son of the Marquis of Wenyuan's estate, his mind was not clear. Even if His Highness the Crown Prince had great affection for him, when encountering this kind of situation, he would not have any pity. Shi Qingyi shouted twice and seemed to have realized something. She suddenly changed her tone. I want to see His Highness the 8th Prince. I want to see His Highness the 8th Prince. The palace maid's expression changed. Some words were not for them to hear. She glanced at the people around her, and the palace servants who came with her instantly understood her meaning. The two of them restrained Shi Qingyi. The palace servant forced his mouth open and poured the entire cup of wine down his throat. This was the most potent poison in the palace, which could kill at the sight of blood. Shi Qingyi's body began to convulse the moment the glass of wine entered her stomach. The palace servants watched him breathe his last with their own eyes. The palace servant who delivered the decree looked at Marquis Wenyuan, who turned his head to the side because he couldn't bear to look at the scene. He said faintly, His Majesty has decreed that the eldest son of Marquis Wenyuan's family has suddenly died. It is not suitable to be buried in the ancestral grave. I'm afraid it will bring disaster to the Wen family. Marquis Wenyuan suddenly turned his head. This meant that Qingyi could not enjoy the incense offerings after death, and could only be a lonely ghost? His Majesty actually hated Qingyi to this extent. Her shoulders slumped, and she seemed to have aged several years in an instant. This official understands. His Highness the Crown Prince was His Majesty's reverse scale. No one could touch him. Chapter 625. In Huang Minga's residence, when she heard the news from Marquis Wenyuan's residence, Huang Minga knew that the matter of her framing Huang Chang'e had been exposed. Then she, thinking of the words she said to Huang Chang'e when she rushed to Clear Phoenix Palace, Huang Minga hated herself for being so stupid. Huang Chang'e would never let her off. Huang Minga anxiously waited for the arrival of the imperial edict. She was even guessing how the Empress Mother would deal with her. Framing the Crown Prince was a huge crime. If the Empress Mother was a little more ruthless, Huang Minga shuddered. She didn't dare to think further. Who knew that after waiting for a few days, there was no imperial edict from the palace? The matter in Marquis Wenyuan's residence also calmed down. This matter seemed to have passed just like that. A few days later, Huang Minga finally reacted. She was fine. Could it be that Shi Qingyi was sincere towards her, and actually gritted her teeth and didn't expose her? Huang Minga thought happily. But on second thought, She remembered that she had confessed to Huang Chang'e before. She definitely couldn't find evidence of her. Huang Mingge secretly felt proud. So what if she knows I did it? Without evidence, no matter how much the Empress Mother dotes on you, you can't do anything. She thought that although she was grounded now, her father was still in the palace. For her father's sake, the Empress Mother wouldn't lock her up for too long. After all, she was the Empress Mother's legitimate daughter. Her future wouldn't be too bad. If Gu Xingyin knew of her thoughts, she would probably laugh out loud. This pitiful and hateful girl, what kind of sweet dreams was she having? However, she was now faced with a dilemma. That's sure Qingyi, it's my fault for not recognizing her. Originally, I planned to wait for you to reach 18 years old, before holding a grand wedding for you. Who would have thought that something like this would happen? Gu Xingyin listened helplessly to his father's nagging in the imperial concubine's palace. I've already decided. On the 8th of next month, the palace will hold a general election. Those young masters of the right age will all be sent into the palace to be selected. Chang'e, not only are you going to get married, but also your sisters who are about the same age as you are going to get married. Feng Jun actually had some other thoughts. Huang Mingge was already 14 years old, and had reached the age where she should be married. But she was now under house arrest in the princess residence outside the palace. The Phoenix Emperor seemed to hate this daughter of his, and didn't allow anyone to mention her. Now, using the opportunity of the general election, he could try to bring it up to the Phoenix Emperor. Gu Xingyin could more or less guess the royal concubine's thoughts, but she didn't have any objections. It would be best if Huang Mingge continued to cause trouble. If she were to settle down, it would be hard for her to make a move. However, speaking of the talent show, Gu Xingyin rejected it in her heart. He wanted her to choose many men from a large group of men to be her lord, and lord servant. Gu Xingyin felt a chill just thinking about that scene. Moreover, with a certain man's jealousy, she probably wouldn't be able to live in peace. Father, I'm not in a hurry. You're already 18 years old, why aren't you in a hurry? The royal concubine's voice came from outside. She wore a noble and dignified crown on her head, and wore a magnificent phoenix robe. It was obvious that she had just left court. When I was your age, you were already born. The Phoenix Emperor glanced at his daughter, obviously disagreeing with what she said. Chapter 626. Gu Xingyin quickly put on a smile, and pulled the Phoenix Emperor to sit down. She didn't bow to the Phoenix Emperor. The Phoenix Emperor was already used to her daughter's intimacy, and didn't mind it. On the other hand, the Phoenix Emperor was surprised by the mother and daughter's interaction. However, Chang'e could act coquettishly, but he couldn't. Your subject greets your majesty. Gu Xingyin quickly moved to the side. The Phoenix Emperor waved her hand. Feng Qing doesn't need to be so courteous. Only then did the Phoenix Emperor sit up. He was undoubtedly happy. It was naturally a good thing that his eldest daughter was doted on by the Phoenix Emperor. Mother Empress. Gu Xingyin dragged out her words. The Phoenix Emperor didn't move. If it's about the election, then there's no need to say anything. Gu Xingyin was a little discouraged. She knew that as a crown princess, it was impossible for her to delay marrying the emperor. After thinking for a while, she changed the topic. Then, Mother Empress, can you promise me that I will choose the emperor myself? The person who will accompany me for the rest of my life should be someone pleasing to my eyes, right? The Phoenix Emperor thought for a while. To a certain extent you can. However, you have to find an emperor who will be beneficial to you in the future. Gu Xingyin thought to herself. How would I know what his status is in this world? Her expression became serious and she said proudly, Mother Empress, you're wrong. I think that only an incompetent ruler needs to borrow the power of the emperor's family to strengthen his position. A ruler who can't even control his own courtiers is not a qualified ruler. The Phoenix Emperor's expression changed slightly. She looked at her daughter with gratification and pride in her eyes. Such a dazzling and proud Chang'e was taught by her. In the next moment, the domineering aura on Gu Xingyin's face disappeared. She looked at the Phoenix Emperor with a flattering smile. Of course, Mother Empress, you're different. You're a domineering ruler. People like Mother Empress and Father Emperor are just icing on the cake. It's better. If her words were heard by someone with ulterior motives, she would be attacked for being disrespectful to the Phoenix Emperor. After all, the marriage between the Phoenix Monarch and the Phoenix Monarch was more related to benefits. The Phoenix Emperor finally couldn't hold back her smile anymore. She glared at Gu Xingyin and scolded jokingly. You have no manners. How dare you tease me? Although he said that, there was no hint of blame in his tone. Gu Xingyin took the opportunity and asked, Then your daughter's husband? The Phoenix Emperor muttered, Since you have the courage to do so, as long as your family background is clean, we can allow you to make your own decisions. Gu Xingyin was overjoyed. Mother Empress is wise. The Phoenix Emperor smiled faintly. If I hadn't agreed just now, wouldn't I be unwise? Gu Xingyin's expression turned solemn. How is that possible? Mother Empress will always be the greatest ruler in your son's heart. The Phoenix Emperor was very pleased to hear this. In the end, Gu Xingyin added, Since that's the case, why don't you promise me one more thing, Mother Empress? She was really pushing her luck. The Phoenix Emperor rolled her eyes at her. Speak. Gu Xingyin deliberated for a moment. Your daughter hasn't learned how to get along with a husband. I wonder if Mother Empress is willing to not take in a secondary husband and concubines during the wedding. The Phoenix Emperor thought for a moment. This was good too. Sir would have a legitimate daughter, so his position as the husband would be guaranteed. She said, You can discuss such a small matter with your father. The Phoenix Monarch, who was watching his eldest daughter interact with the Phoenix Emperor, hurriedly nodded in agreement. Chapter 627. After the Phoenix Emperor left, the Imperial Concubine King slowly discussed these matters with Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin felt a headache and hurriedly said, Father, you can make the decision on these matters. The Imperial Concubine King was silent for a moment and suddenly said, You and Minga. When he saw the interaction between Chang'e and the Phoenix, he suddenly realized that he had underestimated the extent of his eldest daughter's favor. If Chang'e was willing to plead for Minga with His Majesty would definitely listen to her. Gu Xingyin didn't wait for him to finish and her face turned cold. I remember that I still have something to do in the palace, so I'll take my leave first. After that, she bowed to the Imperial Concubine King and was about to leave. Stop. The Imperial Concubine King sternly stopped her. He dismissed his servants, leaving only the father and daughter in the empty hall. He walked to Gu Xingyin, took her hand and said earnestly, Chang'e, I know that Minga did something wrong, but you are sisters after all. Gu Xingyin sneered. A sister who stabbed her own sister? The Imperial Concubine King paused. Minga really didn't do well in this matter. He sighed. She's still young. Chang'e, can't you forgive her for once? You used to love her so much. Gu Xingyin was unmoved. Father, 14 is not young. When I was 14, I started to listen to politics with my mother. And because I used to love her, I hate her as much as I loved her. She looked straight at the Imperial Concubine King. Father, I think I've done everything I can for her. Do you really think that it's only Shi Qingyi who can frame me and accuse me of treason? The Imperial Concubine King's face changed greatly. You mean? Gu Xingyin nodded. I hid this from my mother. Father, as her sister, this is the last time I'll do something for her. I can't afford to have a sister who deliberately wants me dead. She didn't say anything else. She bowed to the Phoenix Monarch and walked out. This time, the Feng Jun didn't ask her to stay. Evil creature. This evil creature. Alone in the hall, the Imperial Concubine trembled with anger. 15 days later, there would be a general election in the palace. All the noble families sent their sons of suitable age to the palace. This time, everyone knew that the Phoenix Monarch was choosing the prince for His Highness the Crown Prince. If anyone was lucky enough to be chosen by the Phoenix Monarch or His Highness the Crown Prince, then they would be able to reach the heavens in a single day. Even if she wasn't chosen by the Crown Prince, the other Crown Princes were about to get married. Becoming the Crown Princess was not a bad choice. The nobles of the Sky Emperor dynasty were quite enthusiastic this time. The Imperial Concubine Lord sat in the high hall and looked at the young masters of the great clans. This was the final palace selection. Those who could enter this place were all talented and good-looking young masters. Gu Xingyin was at the back of the hall, looking at these young masters. No. She felt strange. She thought that her lover should be among these people, but who knew that she couldn't find him? When the young masters finished showing their talents, the imperial concubine lord asked people to take them out. Chang'e, how is it? Is there anyone you like? The imperial concubine lord asked. Gu Xingyin shook her head. The imperial concubine lord couldn't help but complain. Child, your standards are too high. All the best young masters of our Sky Emperor dynasty are here, but you don't like any of them? Chapter 628. Gu Xingyin used silence to express her tacit agreement. If the crown prince didn't like it, there was nothing the Phoenix monarch could do. When those families returned home, they had been waiting for the imperial edict. In the end, the third and fourth princesses had been decided. Only the crown prince hadn't been decided. Not to mention the crown prince, even the secondary prince hadn't been conferred a title. Everyone was discussing this, not knowing what the imperial palace's attitude was. The Phoenix monarch was also worried. His eldest daughter was good at everything, but she seemed to have been raised to be too arrogant. Her standards were too high. But no matter what he said, even if he was angry, Gu Xingyin was unwilling to compromise. She said that she didn't like any of them. Even if they were to marry in the future, the two would likely treat each other with respect. For the first time, the Phoenix monarch felt that being too close to his daughter wasn't a good thing. If it was in the past, he would have directly issued an imperial edict to bestow a marriage. Chang'e wouldn't have said anything. But now, she was tugging at his sleeve with an unwilling expression. The Phoenix monarch found that he couldn't bear to force her. Even the Phoenix monarch himself felt that he should find the best crown prince in the world for his eldest daughter. Just like that, half a month passed. During the Phoenix monarch's 10,000th birthday festival, people from a neighboring country came from the distant grasslands. Speaking of which, the neighboring Qin dynasty and Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were two completely different countries. It was said that the Qin dynasty was the complete opposite of Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. Men were emperors and officials, while women stayed at home to assist their husbands and teach their children. Even giving birth was a woman's matter. In the minds of the people of Heavenly Phoenix dynasty, this was completely impossible. In the eyes of the people of the Qin dynasty, everything in Heavenly Phoenix dynasty was decided by women. It was simply incomprehensible. It was precisely because the two dynasties had completely different systems that the two sides didn't have any conflicts. For thousands of years, they had lived in harmony and even had a good relationship. For the Phoenix monarch's birthday, the Qin dynasty had sent an envoy to represent the Qin dynasty's emperor. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, Heavenly Phoenix dynasty is just as the rumors say. Those who come out are all women. A private conversation came from the carriage at the front of a luxurious caravan. It is quite interesting. A languid and gorgeous voice sounded. The voice from before continued. A woman becoming an emperor and an official is simply unheard of. It's really strange. The man with the gorgeous voice said. Nothing is impossible. We think they're strange, but in their eyes they might think we're strange. This line of magnificent carriages attracted the attention of many people on the road. The people who came and went were all guessing who was sitting in the carriages. Finally, the day of the Phoenix Emperor's birthday arrived. The Phoenix Emperor was holding a grand banquet in the Heavenly Phoenix Palace's Heavenly Phoenix Hall. Sitting next to her was the royal concubine, who was dressed to the nines. As the crown prince, Gu Xingyin sat on the first seat to the left of the Phoenix monarch. Huang Minga, who had been grounded for several months, finally took this opportunity to be released. She was thinking of using the precious gift she had found to regain the Empress's favor. The envoy of the Great Qin dynasty is here to congratulate Her Majesty, the Phoenix monarch of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. The eunuch's voice attracted everyone's attention. All the officials present turned to look at the entrance of the hall. Chapter 629. Indeed, it was as the Prince of Yong had said. The subjects of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were very curious about the Great Qin Empire. They had heard that the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty only had men as officials. Then all the envoys today were men? Caught off guard, a purple robe appeared before everyone's eyes. Hiss. Gu Xingyin could clearly hear everyone's sharp intake of breath. The man in the lead was dressed in a gorgeous purple robe. At the foot of the robe, there were countless large unknown flowers in full bloom. However, no matter how luxurious the robe was, everyone could only see his face. It was a soul-stirring and beautiful face. It was gorgeous and ostentatious to the extreme, but it did not appear weak or feminine at all. It was completely different from the frail and powdered men of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. This was a kind of domineering and ostentatious beauty. Huang Minga stared at this man in a daze, even forgetting the wine by her hand. There was no woman who did not want such a man. It was not just her. Almost everyone in the hall had their gazes stolen by this man. Gu Xingyin was also looking at him. However, she was different from the others. She was only surprised. She had not expected that he was not from the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. The Phoenix Emperor was also dazed for a second. However, she was experienced and knowledgeable. Her temperament was not something that ordinary people could compare to. She quickly regained her composure. She subconsciously glanced at her eldest daughter. As expected, Chang'e was looking at that man. Her gaze was filled with shock and interest, unlike the majority of the people in the hall who were infatuated. The Phoenix Emperor nodded inwardly. This was the bearing that the heir apparent of a country should have. The Great Qin Dynasty's envoy, Qin Ke, represents my emperor to wish Her Majesty the Phoenix Emperor of the Heavenly Phoenix Dynasty good fortune and good health. His voice pulled everyone back from their thoughts. The Phoenix Emperor stood. The Prince of Yong is too courteous. Come give him a seat. In order to express the importance of the envoy, Qin Ke's seat was very close to the front, just across from Gu Xingyin. Qin Ke she had just sat down when he noticed the woman sitting across from him. She didn't look very old. She was wearing a fiery red robe with a phoenix embroidered on it. Her hair was neatly tied up with a golden crown, revealing her perfect and beautiful face. Her long eyebrows were raised, and her phoenix eyes were slightly raised. There was an indescribable sharpness and elegance to her. She seemed to have noticed his gaze and smiled at him. Then, she raised her glass and drank it in one gulp. Qin Chueshi knew who she was. Only His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Sky Emperor Dynasty, could sit in this position. He felt that His Highness was very interesting, so he also revealed a smile. He raised the cup in his hand and drank it in return. As the Crown Prince, Gu Xingyin's every word and action would attract the attention of countless people. Any movement on her side would naturally not escape the eyes of the crowd. As for Qin Keishi, with merely his appearance, he had attracted the gazes of countless people. The interaction between the two fell into the eyes of the people in the palace. Many people who were interested in Qin Keishi were disappointed. It seemed that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince was also interested in His Royal Highness, the Prince of Yong of the Great Qin. No one had the guts to do so. As for Huang Minga, she looked at the two people who seemed to be getting along very well with unwillingness. Her heart was filled with jealousy and hatred. In her eyes, Huang Chang'e was only relying on her status as the Crown Prince. If she were the one sitting in that seat today, then the Prince of Yong of the Great Qin would also see her. She had never been willing to accept this. Chapter 630. By the end of the banquet, Gu Xingyin was already a bit tipsy, and decided to take a stroll in the Imperial Gardens. Your Highness, put this on. Be careful not to catch a cold. Her trusted aide, by Xian, came out with a white cloak. It was already late autumn. If the Crown Prince were to contract typhoid, everyone in Clear Phoenix Palace would suffer. Gu Xingyin didn't want to make things difficult for them, so she obediently allowed Bai Xian to drape the cloak over her. This princess is just taking a stroll. My head is a bit dizzy. Who is it? Her gaze sharpened as she stared coldly at a certain direction, completely unlike a drunk person. This prince just happens to be a bit drunk and couldn't sleep at night, so this prince came out for a stroll. Apologies for being rude to your highness. A gorgeous and seductive voice sounded. Gu Xingyin blushed the moment she saw Bai Xian. So it's the Prince of Yong of the Great Qin. Gu Xingyin withdrew her gaze and looked at Bai Xian. Go and bring this princess a bowl of hangover soup. Your Highness, should I summon someone to serve you? Bai Xian asked after some consideration. No need, Gu Xingyin said indifferently. Bai Xian withdrew, leaving only the two of them in the imperial gardens. The imperial gardens weren't completely dark. A lantern hung high at a certain distance. Although it wasn't as bright as day, it was enough for the two of them to see each other clearly. Qin Kai still looked the same as he did during the day, still wearing his gorgeous purple robes. His expression was clear and bright. He didn't seem to be drunk at all. On the other hand, Gu Xingyin really was a bit drunk. Qin Kai carefully sized her up. The imperial family of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty was renowned for their beauty, and the crown prince, Feng Chang'e, was one of the best. Unlike her previous arrogant appearance, the current crown prince's jade-white face was tinged with a faint red glow. Her eyes seemed to be half open, carrying a trace of blurriness. Her facial features appeared much softer. In particular, the soft white fur around her neck made her appear much more adorable. When Qin Kai came to his senses, he discovered that he had been lost in thought while looking at the crown prince. He face-bombed. It seemed that he was really a little drunk. But in the next moment, the person sitting on the stone chair suddenly opened his eyes. Gu Xingyin stood up and walked to Qin Kai's side. The women of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were tall and slender. Even though she was standing, she wasn't shorter than Qin Quebec. Gu Xingyin inched closer to Qin Quebec. Qin Kai raised his eyebrows. He wanted to see what this crown prince wanted to do. Her hot breath fell on his neck, making him inexplicably nervous. By his ear was the clear teasing of a woman. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, this empress admires your graceful bearing. Are you willing to remain in my Heavenly Phoenix dynasty and be this empress's official ruler? Qin Kai's expression changed. He actually didn't dodge or evade. Instead, he reached out with both hands and easily hugged the slender waist of the person in his arms. It felt really good to the touch. Qin Kai discovered that he was actually somewhat infatuated with this kind of feeling. You. Before Gu Xingyin could open her mouth, Qin Kai interrupted her. Imitating Gu Xingyin, Qin Kai moved his head close to her ear and softly said, "What a coincidence. This prince also admires your Imperial Highness' graceful bearing. I wonder if your Imperial Highness is willing to accompany this prince back to the Great Qin and be a happy Wangfei?" If there were any bystanders watching at this moment, the two of them were tightly hugging each other, their necks intertwined and their breaths intertwined. It was an indescribable intimacy. Gu Xingyin laughed inwardly. This person really wasn't willing to suffer the slightest loss. Chapter 631. Your Highness. Seeing this scene, Bai Xian hurriedly turned around. This servant did not see anything. She hurriedly knelt down. Gu Xingyin was amused. Qin Kai also let go of her, as if nothing had happened between the two. I am going back to rest. Your Highness, Prince of Yong, you should also rest early. Qin Kai nodded reservedly, watching the master and servant walk away. When the two of them were out of sight, he stretched out his hand and gently touched his left ear. The boiling temperature showed that the owner of this body was not as calm as he appeared to be. Just as she said, Bai Xian didn't see or hear anything. Gu Xingyin liked this kind of subordinate very much. Bai Xian was very clear about her identity and position. This kind of subordinate would save a lot of trouble for her master. It was rare for the Qin dynasty's envoys to come to the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. The Phoenix Emperor naturally had to keep them for a while to show off the glory of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. It was just that the Phoenix Emperor could not lower herself to accompany the envoys. The other party was also a member of the imperial family. It would be more appropriate for the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty to send a princess to accompany the envoys. Before the Phoenix Emperor could decide on a candidate, someone had volunteered. All of them want to accompany the envoys to experience the glory of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty? The Phoenix Emperor raised her eyebrows. The Crown Prince, the sixth princess, and several young ladies of the imperial family. Even the eighth princess, Huangminga, who was imprisoned in her residence, expressed their willingness to share the Phoenix Emperor's burden. Thinking of the Prince of Yong's face, which could bring disaster to the country, The Phoenix Emperor could understand their thoughts. The third and fourth princesses had just been engaged and were unwilling to overstep their bounds. Otherwise, there might be a few more names on the list. The Phoenix Emperor glanced at her. She was so biased that she could not even see a shadow. Of course, she could guess the result. Gu Xingyin had been ordered by the Phoenix Emperor to be responsible for receiving, accompanying, and arranging all activities during the visit of the Qin dynasty's envoys. His Highness, Prince of Yong, was indeed a dragon among men. If Chang'e could capture his heart, it would be a great honor for the heavenly Phoenix dynasty. This was what the Phoenix Emperor thought. The next day, Gu Xingyin arrived at the temporary residence of the Prince of Yong. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, in accordance with my Imperial Majesty's decree, I am responsible for receiving the Great Qin's envoys during this period of time. Qin Ke bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Highness. The two of them were polite and courteous to each other. It was impossible to tell that they had been intimate in the Imperial Garden last night. Today, I will bring everyone around our Phoenix City, Gu Xingyin suggested. Great Qin's ambassadors were quite curious about the customs here, and they all agreed. However, this consort and everyone here needs to change our clothes, Gu Xingyin said. One could only see the real Phoenix City if they were dressed casually. A group of people dressed up and left the palace in a low-key manner. However, being low-key was only relative. After all, Gu Xingyin and Qin Keishi were both very attractive. This was especially true for Qin Keishi. She had already lost count of the number of enthusiastic onlookers she had received along the way. In the end, he couldn't bear it any longer and accepted the curtain that Gu Xingyin handed to him. Keishi, don't mind them. They don't have any ill intentions. They were only subdued by your elegance, Gu Xingyin said, holding back her laughter. If her voice didn't contain such schadenfreude, Qin Keishi would be quite willing to believe her. He gnashed his teeth and replied, Chang'e overpraises me. With Chang'e's character and appearance, if she were to go to my Great Qin, I'm afraid that she would receive even worse treatment than me. Chapter 632. Apart from this small interlude, the Great Qin ambassadors were still very satisfied. Sometimes knowing something was one thing, but seeing it with one's own eyes was another. In this capital city, most of the people walking outside were women. These women were all tall and strong, and some of them were even pushing carts or carrying things. Some of them were even loudly hawking their wares. On the other hand, most of the men on the streets had delicate bodies and delicate faces. Some of them even put on powder on their faces and held handkerchiefs in their hands. The Great Qin ambassadors felt that their horizons had been broadened. Looking at the women who were as strong as men, the married ambassadors couldn't help but shudder when they thought of their wives. The Great Qin Empire was more suitable for them. It's getting late. There's a special restaurant up ahead. Everyone, please come with me for a meal. Gu Xingyin looked at the time and said. At that moment, there was a commotion in front of them. Gu Xingyin turned around and looked. It seemed that a horse in front of them had suddenly gone crazy and was charging towards the crowd. In that short moment, the horse was already galloping towards the envoys. Be careful. Before Qin Ke could react, he was pulled back and couldn't help but take a few steps back. He subconsciously looked in Gu Xingyin's direction, and only relaxed when he saw that she was standing in a safe place. Gu Xingyin's expression became serious. Suddenly, she moved her feet and her body became as light as a swallow. Her figure flashed, and she sat firmly on the horse. She lowered her body and pulled the reins with both hands, forcibly stopping the horse's advance. The horse neighed and raised its front hooves high, finally settling down. Gu Xingyin only then noticed that the person on the horse was a young and handsome man. Qin Ke's face turned cold. He looked at Gu Xingyin sitting on the horse. Because she had to pull the reins, her hands were wrapped around the person in front of her. To others it looked indescribably intimate. He clearly saw the young master's face turn red. Gu Xingyin seemed to have realized the inappropriateness of this posture. She nimbly dismounted from the horse and sternly said to the young man, Riding is not allowed in the downtown area. It is easy to hurt others. Don't you know this rule? The young man blushed and mumbled. Today is the first time I've done this. There's an emergency at home. Seeing his good attitude, Gu Xingyin softened her tone. No matter what the reason is, rules are rules. You can go to the city patrol office to receive your punishment later. The young master's expression changed, but he still agreed. Gu Xingyin turned around and prepared to leave, but she was stopped by the person behind her. This young lady, may I ask which family you are from? Tomorrow, I will personally pay you a visit to thank you. When he said this, his face turned red. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that he had fallen in love with her. Gu Xingyin, she said indifferently. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Just be careful in the future. As for thanking me, there's no need. The young master left with a bit of disappointment. When Gu Xingyin returned to the envoy's side, she heard Qin Kei's teasing laughter. I didn't expect that I would see a good show before I even ate the special dishes. Chang'e's play of the hero saving the beauty is really wonderful. It was a compliment, but the jealousy in his tone was not concealed at all. Chapter 633. Gu Xingyin stared blankly for a moment. Soon after, she approached Qin Kei and whispered into his ear. This empress would like to play the hero saving the damsel in distress with Quebec. Unfortunately, Kei won't give this empress this opportunity. Qin Kei's expression didn't change. If Chang'e is willing to sacrifice her image, this prince is naturally willing to be the hero saving the damsel in distress. As the two whispered to each other, the envoys from the Great Qin Empire became extremely worried. Could it be that His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, had taken a liking to the Crown Prince of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty? Although this Crown Prince had an extraordinary bearing and a rarely seen beauty, making her a perfect match with His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong. However, she was the Crown Prince of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. It was impossible for the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty to allow their Crown Prince to be married off. Could it be? The envoys were terrified. Could it be that His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, wanted to marry her off to the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty? Regardless of how uneasy the envoys from the Great Qin Empire were, Gu Xingyin and Qin Kei were all smiles. One appeared to be in high spirits, while the other appeared to be in high spirits. In the following days, Gu Xingyin brought the envoys to experience the various sights and sounds of Phoenix City. After a few days, the envoys' impression of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty changed greatly. Although it was strange for a woman to be the head of a household, the envoys from the Great Qin gradually grew accustomed to the fact that the commoners of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty lived in prosperity, and that the women's ability to earn money was not inferior to that of the men of the Great Qin Empire. However, His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, and the Crown Prince of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were truly too intimate, giving them a headache. However, the envoys couldn't do anything about His Imperial Highness. The Prince of Yong was the youngest son of the Emperor and Empress of the Great Qin Empire. Above him was his elder brother, who was nearly 10 years older than him, the future monarch of the Great Qin Empire. The three people with the highest status in the Great Qin all doted on His Imperial Highness greatly, granting him almost all of his requests. This had nurtured his uncompromising personality. If he made a decision, the envoys couldn't persuade him otherwise. However, Gu Xingyin felt that although the two were somewhat ambiguous these days, there was no substantial progress. She was very sure that Qin Kei she wasn't uninterested in her. If the two of them were given enough time, she was confident that the two of them would naturally be together. However, Qin Kei she was still a member of the Qin dynasty. He had only come to Heavenly Phoenix on a diplomatic mission. Sooner or later, he would have to return. Seeing that it was getting closer and closer to the day when Great Qin's envoys would leave, Gu Xingyin felt that she should give them a strong dose of medicine. Night fell. Gu Xingyin avoided the palace servants and arrived at the palace where Qin Kei lived. Coming uninvited in the middle of the night is not the style of a country's crown prince, Qin Kei said with a smile. Gu Xingyin did not smile. Qin Kei felt a little strange. He turned around and saw Gu Xingyin's serious expression. What's wrong? Unconsciously, his expression became serious. Gu Xingyin stared at him without blinking. Keishi, you know how I feel about you, don't you? Qin Keishi was speechless. He hadn't expected that the other party would say it so bluntly. However, when he thought about it, The women of Heavenly Phoenix weren't as reserved as the women of his empire. He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled carelessly and asked, "What does your Imperial Highness wish to say?" He saw that when he asked this question, a trace of disappointment appeared on the other party's face. This caused his heart to tremble, and a trace of unease quietly spread through him. Gu Xingyin stared at him and asked seriously, "Keishi, if I were to propose marriage to you as an official monarch, would you be willing to accept?" Chapter 634. Qin Ke looked into the other party's dark and affectionate eyes. He could clearly see his own reflection in them. He could see the anticipation and adoration in Gu Xingyin's eyes. Inexplicably, Qin Ke felt that his answer would be very important. But after a long silence, he said softly, "Chang'e, if I ask you to put down everything in the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty and return to the Great Qin with me, would you be willing?" He saw that after he said this, the light in the other party's eyes dimmed. Qin Ke suddenly had the urge to take back what he had just said, but he didn't. Gu Xingyin smiled and said easily, "I was just joking with you. Ke, you know that I can't leave the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty." She raised her head and looked out the window saying, "It's getting late. You should rest early." Finished speaking, she turned and left. Qin Ke, she looked at her back. She was tall and straight, but she exuded a sense of loneliness. He shook his head and laughed inwardly. How could someone as arrogant and unrestrained as Chang'e be lonely? But the next day, the official who came to receive the Great Qin's envoy changed. Qin Ke's heart jumped, asking why His Highness the Crown Prince hadn't come. The official smiled and replied, "His Highness the Crown Prince is busy. His Majesty has ordered that I will be in charge of everyone's affairs for the rest of the day." Qin Ke smiled politely, wondering if the other party was unhappy because of last night's events. At worst, the next time he saw her, what would happen after seeing her? Qin Ke hadn't thought about this question. But in the following days he didn't see Gu Xingyin again. Even when he personally went to Clear Phoenix Palace, the news he received was that the Crown Prince wasn't there. No matter how slow he was, Qin Ke understood that Chang'e didn't want to see him. He was also arrogant. Since the other party didn't want to see him, he wasn't willing to put down his face and stick close to her. In the main hall of Clear Phoenix Palace, Gu Xingyin was dressed in plain white robes. She asked Bai Xian, who had just entered, "Has she left?" Bai Xian answered yes. She did not understand. From the looks of it, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had feelings for His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong. Why did he not meet him? Of course, this was not a question she should ask. She could only hide it in the bottom of her heart. Great Qin's ambassadors will be leaving in a few days, right? Gu Xingyin suddenly asked. Bai Xian replied respectfully, "Yes, Your Highness. There are less than 5 days left." Gu Xingyin raised her head and drank a glass of wine with waning interest. "Qin Keishi, let's see if you can really harden your heart and leave when the time comes." 2 more days passed like this. Qin Ke suddenly realized that the palace was bustling with activity. All the palace servants were in a hurry. Out of curiosity, he stopped a palace servant and asked, "Is there something big going on in the palace?" That palace servant's face reddened for a moment when she suddenly met his gaze. She paused for a moment before replying, "Yes, His Highness the Phoenix Crown Prince is currently choosing a successor for His Highness the Crown Prince. Our Clear Phoenix Palace will have a new master very soon." Qin Ke only felt a rumbling sound, as if something had exploded in his mind. Successor? She was actually preparing for a wedding? A flame of fury rose from the bottom of his heart, dyeing his eyes red. A few days ago, she had solemnly vowed to tell him her feelings. Now, she wanted to marry the successor? Qin Ke, she walked towards Clear Phoenix Palace with a cold expression. Chapter 635. I am looking for Your Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. Qin Ke coldly spoke to the palace servant. The servant smiled respectfully. "Unfortunately, Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong. Our Imperial Highness has some urgent matters to attend to." Qin Ke sneered. "He's not here again." He didn't care. The servant was about to force his way in. The servant panicked. "Your Imperial Highness the Prince of Yong. What are you doing?" Trespassing into Clear Phoenix Palace is a major crime. Imperial bodyguards had already come over to stop Qin Quebec. While they were still in a deadlock, Bai Xian walked out from inside. Everyone, stop! Bai Xian glanced at Qin Ke, respectfully saying, Your Imperial Highness the Prince of Yong, our Imperial Highness invites you in. Qin Ke followed her into Clear Phoenix Palace with a cold expression. Arriving at the entrance to the main hall, Bai Xian tactfully stopped in her tracks. His Imperial Highness is inside. Qin Ke stepped in. The first thing he saw was the woman drinking wine at the head of the hall. She was wearing a loose white robe and her hair was loose. She had a bit of a scholarly air about her. Seeing him enter, Gu Xingyin smiled. Keishi, you've come. Accompany me for a drink. Qin Ke seriously sized her up. This woman's current appearance was different from all the other appearances he had seen. Unlike His Royal Highness, who was dressed in formal attire, her movements were indescribably flirtatious. Wherever her gaze moved, there was an indescribable charm. Qin Ke couldn't help but admit that this Huang Chang'e had the capital to make all men intoxicated. All men, of course, included Qin Quebec. However, he didn't do as Gu Xingyin wished. Instead, he stood there motionlessly, his beautiful face completely frozen. This prince has heard that His Imperial Highness is preparing to marry the Empress? Gu Xingyin stared blankly for a moment before smiling indifferently. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, is truly well informed. This was an admission. Qin Ke only felt an indescribable flame rise in his heart. Unfortunately, Gu Xingyin was afraid that this fire would not burn enough and added, It's a pity that His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, will have already left Heavenly Phoenix. I'm afraid that he will not be able to see that scene. In the next moment, her vision darkened and Qin Ke's face appeared in front of her. There was a long table between them. Qin Chueshi gritted his teeth and said, Huang Chang'e, what did you say a few nights ago? Very good, I haven't forgotten what I said. Are you going to marry the princess? Gu Xingyin paid no attention to his anger, unhurriedly pouring herself a cup of wine. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, we have seriously sought your opinion. She raised the wine cup in her hand and drained it in one gulp. This one is the Crown Prince of Heavenly Phoenix, and it is my duty to help the royal family produce more offspring. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, forget those words. You'll be returning to the Great Qin Empire soon, and I'm afraid we won't see each other again in this lifetime. Her hand was tightly gripped by Qin Quebec. The other party's strength was great, as if he wanted to break her hand. Forget. Qin Ke softly repeated, suddenly smiling. However, there was not the slightest trace of a smile in his eyes. What does your Imperial Highness take this prince for? After teasing me, you want to dismiss this prince with a forget? His long sleeves swept the items on the table to the ground, the cups falling to the ground with a crisp shattering sound. Qin Ke unquestionably kissed Gu Xingyin's lips. There was no doubt that this kiss contained intense emotions. Qin Ke bit her lips without any pity, as if he wanted to swallow her whole. Chapter 636. Gu Xingyin stared blankly for a moment before unceremoniously turning the tables. She wrapped her arms around Qin Ke's waist and pulled him towards her. Bai Xian had been standing guard outside the hall. When she heard the crisp sound of porcelain shattering, she was startled. However, without His Imperial Highness's summons, she didn't dare to casually enter. She could only quietly approach the door and listen. Not long after, she retreated with a red face. Thinking for a moment, she took 2 more steps outside, further away from the hall. By the time this intense kiss ended, the corners of their mouths were stained with blood. Gu Xingyin didn't care at all as she wiped it with her sleeve. Smiling, she said, Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, is so passionate. Qin Ke stared at her closely. Chang'e is not bad either. The two looked at each other for a second before Gu Xingyin took the lead to speak. So what does your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, mean by coming here? Qin Ke was speechless for a moment. What did he come here for? He had only heard the news that the Crown Prince was going to choose a successor. For a moment he was enraged. However, what was he going to say after finding Chang'e? Tell her not to take a wife? Or was it as Chang'e had said that night? Was he willing to give up everything, come to the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty, and become her successor? Seeing him like this, Gu Xingyin understood that he hadn't thought things through. She sneered. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, since you still don't understand what you are thinking, then leave. This princess doesn't have that much time to waste with you. Qin Ke knew in his heart that she was forcing him to make a choice. However, he couldn't be sure. He didn't know if his feelings for this woman were worth giving up everything he once had. By Xian, Gu Xingyin shouted loudly. See the guest out. Hearing the summons, Bai Xian walked in. Sensing the atmosphere in the hall, her heart jumped. Wasn't everything fine before? Why are they fighting now? Qin Ke looked at the woman who had turned her back to him. The heat from their embrace had not yet subsided, but his heart had already cooled. He turned around and walked out without saying a word. After he left, Gu Xingyin, who had been standing the whole time, sat down as if she had lost all her strength. Bai Xian looked at her red eyes and was shocked. Your Highness. Gu Xingyin waved her hand. It's fine. Clean up this place. I want to rest for a while. Bai Xian accepted the order and left. A few days later, the second election in the palace began. The Great Qin's diplomatic mission was scheduled to depart the next day. His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, expressed to the Phoenix Emperor that he was extremely interested in how the Heavenly Phoenix chose its concubines and requested to watch. Knowing that there was something fishy going on between him and his eldest daughter, the Phoenix Emperor naturally agreed. Thus, on that day, the imperial concubine sat in the main seat. For the first time, Huang Chang'e personally appeared at the scene, and sat on the first chair on the left. Qin Keishi sat opposite her. The young masters who were selected came forward one by one and bowed to the three of them. When they saw Gu Xingyin, the majority of the candidates blushed. Not only were the crown princes of noble status, but they were also incomparably beautiful. Gu Xingyin appeared indifferent throughout. On the other hand, Qin Keishi's aura grew colder and colder as he looked at the elegant, flirtatious, and cold young masters. Since Gu Xingyin didn't show any special interest in anyone, he reluctantly endured. Until one person appeared. Chapter 637. That man had a face as cold as the moonlight. His aura, in particular, made people feel that he was holy and inviolable. Qin Keishi believed that he didn't lose to him in terms of looks, but the other party's aura was the most attractive. Sure enough, he subconsciously looked at Gu Xingyin, and found that the other party's eyes lit up. There was a flash of surprise in his eyes. She was interested in this man. This realization made Qin Keishi's face darken. The imperial concubine lord seemed to be satisfied with this young master, and asked a few questions in succession. After asking, the imperial concubine lord looked at his eldest daughter with an inquiring gaze. That man was clearly standing obediently, but it made people feel that he was looking down at them from above. Gu Xingyin seemed to be attracted to him and said indifferently, "Come closer and let me take a look." The man obediently took 2 steps forward. Gu Xingyin didn't seem to think it was enough. Come closer. Any closer and the two of them would be leaning against each other. Qin Keishi's hand gripped the armrest of the chair so tightly that it seemed like he was going to crush it. Seeing that the distance between the two of them was shrinking, an unforeseen event happened in an instant. The man suddenly raised his head, and a soft sword popped out of his long sleeve with a whoosh. The blade of the sword was like flowing water as it attacked the imperial concubine sitting on the chair. The imperial concubine lord cried out in alarm. Gu Xingyin's expression didn't change, and she dodged the attack in a flash. At the same time, a few of the young masters who were originally standing at the back flashed out and surrounded Gu Xingyin, who was fighting with the man. It was obvious that these people's target was Gu Xingyin. The imperial concubine lord was already surrounded by the palace servants, and the palace guards hadn't arrived yet. Gu Xingyin also felt a little troubled. These assassins didn't seem to be from the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. Their moves were strange, and she couldn't get away for a while. A figure flashed in front of her, and a folding fan instantly blocked a dagger coming from the side. "What are you doing here?" Gu Xingyin's expression darkened when she saw who it was. Qin Keishi calmly fended off the assassin on the side. "Let me see what kind of charm this young master of yours has." This man, at a time like this, still cared about his poisonous tongue. Gu Xingyin felt a little helpless. She already knew that there was an assassin among this group of young masters. She even let that person get close to her just now to give him a chance to strike. She even knew who the mastermind behind all of this was. The reason why she dared to be so arrogant was because she was confident that she could hold on until the arrival of the guards. However, Qin Keixi's arrival had indeed lessened the pressure on her. On the contrary, the assassins on the other side felt that something was wrong. They didn't have much time left. If the guards rushed over, they wouldn't have the chance to attack anymore. Thinking of the consequences of failing the mission, this group of people's attacks changed. They actually directly attacked without any regard for their lives. She would rather risk her own injury to leave a wound on Gu Xingyin's body. Enemies who weren't afraid of death were often the hardest to deal with. Glancing around, she saw that the guards had already arrived at the entrance of the main hall. Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. However, her eyes caught a glimpse of a scene that made her pupils shrink. Be careful. Qin Keishi only felt his body being hugged and turned around forcefully. Following that, he watched as the sharp tip of a snow-white blade pierced through Gu Xingyin's chest. Gu Xingyin's last thought before she fainted was, "System, remove the sense of pain." Qin Keishi watched as she closed her eyes in his arms. His entire body was trembling. Chapter 638. The assassins had already been subdued by the Imperial Guards, but Qin Kei didn't pay any attention to them. He just gently touched the tip of Gu Xingyin's nose with a trembling hand, then suddenly turned around and shouted, "Imperial Physician." At this time, the Imperial concubine also struggled to stand up and quickly walked to the front of the two people. Looking at his daughter who had been stabbed in the chest, he almost fainted. When the Phoenix Emperor heard the news and rushed over, the Imperial physician had just finished treating Gu Xingyin. "How is it?" the Phoenix Emperor hurriedly asked. Her heart was heavy. She had just seen Changa's injury, and it was in such a position. Sure enough, the Imperial physician replied with a grave expression. "Replying to your Majesty, the Crown Prince was injured in a vital part. I'm afraid it's very dangerous." Qin Kei's body swayed. The Imperial concubine looked at him with anger in his heart. "If it weren't for you, my Changa wouldn't." "Feng Qing," the Phoenix Emperor sternly shouted. "Changa did it willingly. You can't blame others. If you really want to blame someone, you should put the blame on the mastermind behind this." Her eyes were full of murderous intent. No matter who it was, since they dared to have ideas about Changa, they should be prepared to bear the consequences. Qin Kei suddenly smiled softly. His eyes were fixed on the unconscious Gu Xingyin, and he didn't give a shred of charity to others. "Imperial concubine, don't worry. If anything happens to Changa, this prince will naturally go with her. I won't let her feel the slightest bit lonely." The Imperial concubine looked at this noble and proud man with a complicated gaze. From his reaction and Changa's unhesitation to block the knife for him in the hall, how could he not know that there were feelings between the two? The Phoenix Emperor didn't say anything. She saw that Qin Kei's mood was obviously unstable, so she sighed and walked out with the Imperial concubine, leaving him alone. The palace servants were standing guard not far away, and no one dared to look in this direction. Qin Kei looked at this woman. He didn't expect that at such a moment, she would block a fatal knife for him without hesitation. "You win." He suddenly laughed. "If you can wake up this time, I will officially answer the question you asked me that night. If you really can't wake up, then I'll accompany you," he said softly. "I won't let you be alone." He gently leaned his head against her side. Gu Xingyin was in a coma for 7 days. Even the Imperial physicians were at their wits' end. The head of the hospital even apologized to the Phoenix Emperor, saying that he was powerless and that everything was up to fate. Qin Kei sat motionlessly by the bed for 7 days. Just by looking at his complexion, he didn't look any better than Gu Xingyin, who was lying on the bed. He stared numbly at the person on the bed as the Imperial physician spoke. "If His Highness doesn't wake up tonight, I really..." At this moment, Gu Xingyin regained consciousness. She saw Qin Keishi's appearance, and a fine and dense pain spread in her heart. This man, at this moment, Where was the slightest bit of his incomparably gorgeous appearance? His face was deathly pale, his eye sockets were sunken, and even his lips were cracked and bloodshot. System, how badly did you make me? The system answered honestly. Host, you said that you must make yourself look like you're in danger, and it's best if you can't be saved. I strictly followed your instructions. Chapter 639. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Her system was indeed a straightforward one. That's right, she could have avoided the current situation. There was no need to mention who had sent the assassins that day. Just as they were about to hurt Qin Ke, she had already saved him. But at that time, she changed her mind and sent herself up instead. Firstly, she needed a chance to make Qin Ke see her heart clearly. Secondly, she needed a chance. Secondly, she wanted Huang Minga to be unable to make a comeback. There was nothing more important than herself as a bargaining chip. Anyway, she had already calculated the angle. She was sure that she only looked dangerous, but there was no real danger to her life. Only if she was dangerous enough would the Phoenix Emperor and Lord Feng hate the person behind the scenes. She had even specially instructed the system to make sure that she was safe and sound. But she didn't expect Qin Ke to have such a big reaction. Just one look and her heart ached. She wanted to open her eyes immediately and tell him that she was fine. The system stopped her. Host, please don't fail at the last step. Gu Xingyin's heart calmed down a little, and she listened to the system. Late at night, the entire Clear Phoenix Palace was brightly lit. It wasn't just Qin Quebec. The Phoenix Emperor, Lord Feng, and a room full of imperial physicians and palace servants were also standing in the room. The imperial physicians said that if she didn't wake up tonight, it would probably be true. Everyone was watching over her, but the person on the bed looked calm. How did she look like she was about to wake up? Lord Feng couldn't hold back his tears anymore. As the ruler of a country, the Phoenix Emperor naturally couldn't cry. But looking at her red eyes and tightly pursed lips, one could imagine the pain and anticipation in her heart wasn't any less than Lord Feng's. In comparison, Qin Ke was much calmer. But underneath this calmness, there was more pain and despair than hysteria. The head of the imperial physicians came forward and carefully examined the crown prince on the bed. He shook his head and retreated to the side. Lord Feng finally couldn't hold back his tears. Time passed bit by bit. There was still no movement from the person on the bed. The first rays of dawn were about to appear. Everyone no longer had any hope. They were only here to accompany her for a little longer. Water. Amidst the silence, a weak call suddenly sounded. Qin Ke's reaction was delayed for a moment. He even suspected that his heart was filled with too much desire, to the point that he was hallucinating. The Phoenix Emperor was the first to react. She was overjoyed as she said, "Hurry up and bring some water over." After he finished speaking, he shouted to the side, "Imperial physician." No one could tell that the Phoenix Emperor's calm voice was actually trembling slightly. Qin Ke turned her head sluggishly. Although the person on the bed was still weak, she had indeed opened her eyes. 7 days. The tears that he had not shed for 7 days finally fell at this moment. Gu Xingyin's heart ached for him, but she couldn't get up to hug him and tell him that she would never leave him. The imperial physician carefully examined Gu Xingyin's body. His expression was still filled with disbelief. Finally, she bowed to the Phoenix Emperor and said, "Your Majesty, this is great news. His Highness the Crown Prince has regained consciousness and is no longer in danger. What's left is to spend some time recuperating." Chapter 640. His Highness the Crown Prince, whom everyone thought to be incurable, had awoken. Many people breathed a sigh of relief when they heard this news. Most of the people who heaved sighs of relief were the palace servants who served in the palace, as well as some young and childless monarch attendants. These days, because of the assassination attempt on the crown prince, the atmosphere in the entire palace was incomparably tense. Everyone was very careful and did not dare to make the slightest mistake. They were afraid that if they were not careful, they would be punished by the furious His Majesty and Her Highness. Thankfully, His Highness the Crown Prince was safe. There was another group of people who pretended to be jubilant on the surface, but secretly hated Huang Chang'e. Why was she so tenacious? These people were, of course, the concubines who had princesses or princesses of the same age as Huang Chang'e. They were the ones who hoped that Huang Chang'e wouldn't wake up. Of course, at this time, even if their hearts were bleeding with hatred, they still had to pretend to be blessed by the heavens. They went to the Phoenix Palace to report the good news to Her Majesty. They couldn't enter the clear Phoenix Palace. The Phoenix Emperor had ordered that no one was to disturb the Crown Prince before he recovered. Of course, Qin Kai wasn't included in this list. At this moment, he was being forced to rest by Gu Xingyin. If others come in and see you like this, they won't know who's injured. Gu Xingyin said with a smile. Qin Kai only looked at her without speaking. Gu Xingyin sighed inwardly. She had really scared him this time. She softened her voice. I'm fine now. Kai, don't worry. Why? Qin Kai asked. He hadn't spoken for many days. When he spoke, his voice was extremely hoarse. Gu Xingyin didn't know what he was asking. Why did you block that blade for me? Gu Xingyin smiled. If something happened to His Highness, the Prince of Yong, in Heavenly Phoenix, it wouldn't be a small matter. Qin Kai interrupted her. I want to hear the truth. Gu Xingyin stopped smiling. Okay, then I'll tell you the truth. Kai, do you really not know? She had never hidden her thoughts from Qin Kai. Gu Xingyin suddenly laughed. When I was unconscious, I vaguely heard someone say that as long as I could wake up, he would officially answer my question that night. Qin Kai's eyes widened as if he hadn't expected her to be conscious at that time. Gu Xingyin said softly, I know what you've been doing these days. You've worked hard. Qin Kai laughed. Do you want to know the answer? Gu Xingyin pretended to listen attentively. Qin Kai said word by word, Chang'e, I only have one condition. If you want me, then you have to agree. In this life there is only me, Qin Kai. Similarly, Qin Kai can also swear that in this lifetime, he will only love you, Huang Chang'e. Gu Xingyin smiled, her eyes shining brightly. Keishi, if it wasn't for the fact that it's inconvenient for me to do this, I'd really want to pin you down. Qin Kai glared fiercely at her. Let's see who will press who down. In Clear Phoenix Palace, the two were sweet and sweet. In Heavenly Phoenix Palace, Huang Minga knelt on the cold ground, enduring the fury of the Phoenix Emperor. Minga, you really disappoint us. The Phoenix Emperor looked at his daughter, only disgust in his eyes. Chapter 641. Do you really think that no one knows what you did before? Chang'e has defended you in front of me time and time again. I didn't pursue the matter because of Chang'e. I always thought that you are sisters, and that you will repent one day. The Phoenix Emperor seemed to be angry. She flicked her sleeves and threw the teacup on the table. The hot tea splashed on Huang Minga's body, and she couldn't help but shudder. But immediately, a wave of resentment rose from her heart. She probably knew that she really didn't have a chance this time. Even if she wasn't sentenced to death, she wouldn't have a good ending. For Chang'e's sake, Mother Empress, you keep talking about Chang'e. Have you ever considered the feelings of our other daughters? Huang Minga threw caution to the wind. The words that she only dared to hide in her heart in the past were now spilled out. Am I the only one who hates her? If you don't believe me, you can ask the other sisters. Who doesn't hate Huang Chang'e in their hearts? We are all your daughters, but in your heart, all of us added together can't even compare to a single strand of Huang Chang'e's hair. The Phoenix Emperor looked at her in disbelief, as if it was the first time she knew this daughter. So this is the reason why you keep on framing Chang'e? Huang Minga didn't reply, which meant that she admitted it. The Phoenix Emperor trembled with anger. How did I give birth to such a cruel and vicious thing like you? She turned around and didn't look at Huang Minga anymore. Come, pass the imperial edict. The 8th princess Huang Minga has no respect for her superiors. She is disloyal and unfilial. She is demoted to a commoner and imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum. She can never be released. Huang Minga collapsed. Imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum, never to be released. It would be better to just kill her directly. The imperial edict of the Heavenly Phoenix Palace was passed to the inviting Phoenix Palace. The Phoenix Emperor closed his eyes when he heard the news. Your Highness, do you want to persuade His Majesty? A place like the Imperial Mausoleum. The Phoenix Emperor opened his eyes and looked at her coldly. Persuade His Majesty? How? Chang'e is still lying there now. She hired someone to assassinate the crown prince. This evil creature. His Majesty is already benevolent enough not to kill her directly. Of course he felt terrible. After all, she was a child that he carried for 10 months. But she really let him down. The Phoenix Emperor acted quickly. On the second day after the decree was issued, Huang Minge left Phoenix City under the escort of hundreds of imperial guards. It was said that back then, Huang Minge had knelt in front of the inviting Phoenix Palace for several hours, but the Lord Concubine didn't even see her once. Gu Xingyi knew that in this lifetime, unless there was a special decree from the emperor, Huang Minge would never have the chance to take a step out of that desolate land. Great Qin's diplomatic group stayed in Heavenly Phoenix for an entire month. The reason was naturally because a certain crown prince was injured and needed someone to take care of him. As for why the crown prince had so many palace attendants to attend to him, and why he only needed His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, the Great Qin's envoys expressed their heartache. Their Great Qin dynasty's most beautiful and noble Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, probably wouldn't be able to remain in the Great Qin dynasty for much longer. In the 11th month, Great Qin's ambassadors officially returned. Gu Xingyi, who had not fully recovered from her injuries, insisted on escorting them out of the city. Because of her injuries, she didn't ride a horse. When she got off the carriage, she even put on a thick fur cloak. Keishi, wait for me. I will personally go to Great Qin with a huge gift and ask for His Majesty's hand in marriage. Gu Xingyi held his hand. The Great Qin's envoys all expressed that they didn't see or hear anything. All right. Chapter 642. In the 3rd month of the 11th year of the Phoenix era of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty, the Crown Prince Feng Chang'e personally set off for the Great Qin to seek the hand of His Highness, the Prince of Yong. In the 8th month of the 11th year of the Phoenix era, the Crown Prince held a grand wedding in the Clear Phoenix Palace. Not only the Phoenix Emperor and the Phoenix Monarch, but even the common people of Heavenly Phoenix dynasty heaved a sigh of relief. The Crown Prince was no longer young. He was finally getting married. After the complicated ceremony, the newlyweds, who had received countless blessings, finally arrived at the bedchamber. The palace maids had already tidied up everything and left the place to the two of them after finishing their preparations. Keishi. Gu Xingyi smiled with satisfaction. You finally belong to me. Qin Kai raised his long eyebrows. His beautiful appearance, set off by his red robes, was even more unparalleled. You also belong to me, Chang'e. The hall gradually quieted down. Bai Xian, Lan Xian, another palace servant who stood with Bai Xian on night watch, whispered, Tell me, who do you think is between His Highness and the Crown Prince? She stealthily pointed up with her finger. She couldn't be blamed. It really made people curious. Bai Xian glared at her unhappily. Be careful. If His Highness hears you, he will punish you tomorrow. But soon after she couldn't help but laugh. It should be His Highness. However, this question became a mystery in everyone's heart. The next morning, when Bai Xian and Lan Xian entered the hall to serve the two princes, both of them looked calm and energetic. There was no sign of anything going on. Gu Xingyi and Qin Kai, she went to visit the Phoenix Emperor and the Phoenix Monarch respectively. Both of them were very satisfied with Qin Keishi. After all, when Chang'e was injured, this child showed deep affection. It was truly moving. After a long time, everyone said that His Highness and the Crown Prince were simply a match made in heaven. The relationship between the two was so good that there was no room for outsiders. The only fly in the ointment was that Zheng Jun's stomach still showed no signs of pregnancy even after half a year of marriage. Even the Phoenix Monarch couldn't help but glance at Qin Keishi's stomach when he paid his respects. The women of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty didn't have the ability to conceive. After marriage, if the men wanted to have children, they would eat a fruit called the spirit-bearing fruit. After eating it, their bodies would have the ability to conceive. However, it was only the ability to conceive. It didn't mean that the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty's imperial harem would be pregnant immediately. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many childless emperors' imperial concubines. The imperial concubine couldn't be blamed for being anxious. Gu Xingyin only had Qin Keishi as his lord. Everyone could see that the relationship between the two of them was very good. It was really strange that she wasn't pregnant. In the imperial court, there were already ministers who proposed to take in a secondary emperor for the crown prince, but they were all firmly rejected by Gu Xingyin. Only Bai Xian and Lan Xian, who served the two of them, knew the truth. His Highness didn't take the spirit-pregnant fruit at all. Princess, 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 royal highnesses, princesses, princess. Fruit, 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 royal princess, royal highness, princess, princess, highness, princess, highness. Princess. Qin's princess of marriage, princess of. But no matter how hard she tried to hide it, Qin Keishi would find out one day. That night, Qin Keishi sat quietly on the bed and looked at her. Why didn't you let me eat those fruits? Gu Xingyin paused. Marrying me has already made you suffer. He was such a proud person. For her, he gave up his noble status and his family to come to this isolated heavenly phoenix. How could she bear to let a man of the great Qin Empire suffer such a thing? Chapter 643. She didn't finish her sentence, but Qin Keishi understood what she meant. He didn't say anything else. He just grabbed her hand, locked her in his embrace, and gently kissed her. In the 4th month of the 12th year of the Phoenix origin, Crown Prince Zhengjun suddenly felt nauseous while eating. After calling for an imperial physician, he was overjoyed. The two palaces were overjoyed and endlessly rewarded Clear Phoenix Palace. Gu Xingyin only felt frightened. After everyone left, she looked at Qin Keishi, who had been properly placed on the bed. You don't have to do this for me. Qin Keishi smiled. When I agreed to marry into Heavenly Phoenix Palace, I was already prepared for this. She didn't want him to feel wronged, but how could he bear to see her endure pressure from all sides for him? A crown prince without an heir, no matter how much the Phoenix Emperor doted on her, he wouldn't be able to tolerate her, right? Gu Xingyin only felt a warm current surging in her heart. She gently leaned her head against Qin Keishi's chest and said, I Huang Chang'e, am so lucky to be able to marry you. Qin Keishi reached out and held her hand, a warm smile on his face. How could he, Qin Keishi, not be lucky? In the 10th month of the 12th year of the Phoenix origin, Crown Prince Zhengjun gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl, in Clear Phoenix Palace. Gu Xingyin only glanced at the two little children before sitting down beside Qin Keishi. She lowered her head and leaned close to his face, softly saying, Let's raise these two children well and not have any more children, okay? Qin Keishi smiled and nodded. The phoenix soaring and the dragon soaring were auspicious signs. No one could criticize Clear Phoenix Palace anymore. Those righteous voices that wanted to choose a concubine for the crown prince also gradually weakened. Everyone knew that the crown prince was deeply in love with Crown Prince Zhengjun. Even looking at the situation, it seemed that he was going to stop taking in a harem for him. Many people disapproved of this. In their opinion, the crown prince hadn't been married for long. It was the time for the young couple to be affectionate. In addition, Crown Prince Zhengjun was born with a heavenly appearance. It was common sense that the crown prince was very important. But women always liked the new and hated the old. No matter how beautiful the face was, there would be a time when it would age. When that time came, how could the crown prince who sat on the throne of the world still be able to hold on? However, Gu Xingyin used facts to tell them what it meant to be the only one in a lifetime. The Phoenix Emperor was in his prime. As the crown prince, Gu Xingyin did not feel much pressure. She even had time to bring Qin Keishi and the two children out of the palace to play in disguise. Every time the nobles of Heavenly Phoenix saw the crown prince, they could see that she and His Royal Highness were in love with each other. The two of them were the envy of others. Another 10 years passed. The Phoenix Emperor officially passed the throne to Gu Xingyin and retired to the depths of the palace to enjoy the rest of his life. Gu Xingyin officially inherited the throne of the Phoenix Emperor and changed the name of the country to Fengyong. Using Qin Keishi's previous title as the country's title showed that she valued him greatly. On the first day of the new Phoenix Emperor's ascension to the throne, he said something in front of all the officials. In this lifetime, we will only love His Royal Highness. Everyone in the future, Do not mention the matter of the imperial harem. When these words came out, the court was shocked. Many of the old officials knelt and begged His Majesty to retract the decree. Gu Xingyin hated these officials who took advantage of their seniority the most. They relied on their seniority to think that it would be difficult for the new emperor to deal with them. However, Gu Xingyin did not fall for this trick. After he thunderously sent the old officials home to retire, no one raised any more objections. The Phoenix Emperor and Her Royal Highness only had one son and one daughter. Just as the Phoenix Emperor said on the day of her ascension, she would only have Her Royal Highness in the imperial harem. Later, there were rumors that the two of them only had a pair of children because the Phoenix Emperor pitied Her Royal Highness and did not want him to suffer the pain of childbirth. But as for what the truth was, everyone could only speculate from a few records. Chapter 644. Once upon a time, there was an immortal herb that was accidentally dropped into the mortal world by a fairy during a banquet held by the heavenly court. This was an extremely rare immortal herb that was plucked from the Punglai immortal island in the depths of the South Sea. The fairy didn't dare to speak of it for fear of being punished, so she concealed it. That immortal herb fell into the garden of a wealthy family. It wasn't conspicuous among the precious flowers, and it stayed there peacefully for more than 10 years. Until one day it bloomed. When Gu Xingyin came to this world, she just happened to see this immortal herb bloom. After all, it wasn't an ordinary plant. When it bloomed, it didn't simply bloom, but it transformed. On the long leaves, a white flower slowly bloomed. The bud was very small, but when it unfolded, it seemed as if an endless number of petals were released. The flowers in the garden bent towards her at the same time, and the entire garden was filled with a strange fragrance. This flower fragrance wasn't ordinary. It carried the scent of an immortal. If an ordinary person smelled it, even if they didn't get sick or have no disasters, it wouldn't be a problem for them to prolong their life. Then, that white flower gently trembled twice. A white light flashed, and the flowers and leaves instantly turned into dots of fluorescent light. Within the dots of light, a graceful figure in white gradually took shape. Her white clothes were made of an unknown material, and it was extremely elegant and beautiful. Her sleeves and skirt were full of blooming petals, elegant and lovely. Her hair wasn't tied up, and there was only a white flower crown woven from the top of her head. Under the flower crown was an astonishingly beautiful face. This was a woman who had transformed from words. The moment Gu Xingyin opened her eyes, she looked in a certain direction. Beside the pillar in the garden pavilion, a man in a black robe stood quietly. His face was handsome, and his black eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, staring closely at her. There was an aura as heavy as a mountain on his body. This was something that could only be emitted by someone who had been in a high position for many years. It was very obvious that the scene of her transformation had been seen by this person. Who are you? I don't think I've seen you before? Gu Xingyin tilted her head to look at the man. The man walked over step by step. He came to Gu Xingyin's side. The strong fragrance from before had already dissipated, but when one walked close to the woman, they could still smell the fragrance. Oh, what kind of people do you usually see? He asked with interest. Gu Xingyin frowned as if she was thinking carefully. There are Cui Erilan, Chang Sheng, Master Yun, Madam Yun, Miss Yun. Yuan Rui thought for a moment. Among these people he only knew a few names. The others sounded like slaves. He was not interested in these things. Who are you? Why are you here? Gu Xingyin seemed surprised by his question. I live here. I have lived here for more than 10 years. I'm Yulan. Live here? Yuan Rui glanced at the flower bed and understood what she meant. It seemed that she really treated these two pieces of soil as her home. For some reason, Yuan Rui suddenly wanted to laugh, but he held back. He turned his head and asked, Are you willing to go with me? Gu Xingyin was not so easy to fool. Why should I go with you? Yuan Rui scared her. You should know that the people here are different from you. If they know that you are a flower, they will kill you. Chapter 645. What surprised him was that this girl, who looked like a flower fairy or a flower spirit, was not easy to fool at all. Gu Xingyin smiled slyly. If I turn into a flower, none of them will know. The man guided her patiently. Don't you want to take a look at the outside world? Gu Xingyin's eyes widened. She had heard Cui, and the others mention that the outside of the Yun residence was fun. Seeing the longing in her eyes, Yuan Rui chuckled softly, his eyes filled with determination. If you come with me, I can take you everywhere to play. As a flower, the biggest disadvantage was that she had always been rooted in the soil. Before she transformed, she had never gone anywhere. Gu Xingyin, who was tempted, nodded dizzily. At this moment, someone entered the garden. His Highness Xian King. Her voice came to an abrupt halt when she saw Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin looked at her. She recognized this person. This was the eldest miss of the Yun residence, Yin Chuqing, the #1 beauty of the Ming Kingdom. However, this #1 beauty might be discounted now because of the addition of Gu Xingyin. If Yin Chuqing was a beauty in exquisite brocade clothes, then Gu Xingyin was the uncanny workmanship of nature. She was naturally exquisite, like the moonlight on the horizon, like an orchid in an empty valley. Yin Chuqing's expression was not good. It was not easy for her father to have the opportunity to invite His Highness Sage King into the estate, and he had long instructed her to perform well. If she could gain His Highness Sage King's favor, it would be a good thing for the entire Yin estate. Yin Chuqing was originally very confident. This His Highness Xian King had not taken a wife or concubines, and with her beauty, it should not be a problem to win him over. She had specially dressed up to come here. However, she was not so confident now. This was because there was clearly a beauty beside His Highness Xian King who was not inferior to her, and was even more beautiful than her. She squeezed out a smile. May I know who this young lady is? I didn't see you just now. However, she thought in her heart, she's definitely not a daughter of a good family if she's dressed like that. Gu Xingyin, who had a smile on her face, suddenly became angry and turned around to ignore her. Yuan Rui didn't know why she was angry. He held her back with one hand and nodded at Yin Chuqing. These people are from the prince's estate. They came here to look for this prince. He glanced at Yin Chuqing. How could he not know what she was planning? Yin Chuqing was indeed beautiful, but he now had an even better treasure. He said, It's getting late. I'll take my leave. Yin Chuqing watched helplessly as the Sage King pulled her away. When they left the residence of Yun, there was already a carriage from the imperial residence waiting outside. Although the people outside were very curious as to why the prince had brought back such an outstanding beauty, they tactfully did not dare to ask any questions. What's wrong with you? Yuan Rui asked curiously. Gu Xingyin looked at him angrily. She scolded me. Yuan Rui thought for a moment before realizing that she was talking about Yin Chuqing. How did she scold you? He was very curious. The two clearly did not communicate at all. Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand and pointed at his chest. She said it here. Yuan Rui's expression suddenly became serious. She can actually hear the thoughts in other people's hearts? Then can you hear what I'm saying? He asked. Gu Xingyin shook her head honestly. You're very strange. You're the first person I can't hear. Chapter 646. Gu Xingyin sat in the room and slowly sorted out the plot of this world. Originally, Yulan had also transformed in the back garden of the Yun residence on this day. However, she did not meet Yuan Rui. Yulan, who had mysteriously appeared in the garden of the Yun residence, naturally aroused the vigilance of the people of the Yun residence. Yulan, who was naive and did not know how to win people's hearts, immediately exposed her secret. When she heard that the people of the Yun residence wanted to catch her, she ran away in fear. However, the people of the Yun residence were afraid, and went to invite a Taoist priest who came out of nowhere and chased her all over the city. Yulan, who had just transformed and did not know anything, was caught in the weak immortal qi and her body was sealed. She was brought back to the Yun residence. The person who was most hostile to her in the Yun residence was actually the eldest daughter of the Yun residence, Yin Chuqing, because she was jealous that Yulan was prettier than her. She personally scratched Yulan's face and sold her to the brothel. After living a life worse than death in the brothel, Yulan finally took advantage of an opportunity to learn the escape route from the guard's heart, and successfully escaped. For the next 10 years she lived in seclusion deep in the mountains, and relied on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. Unfortunately, Yulan, whose heart had been corroded by hatred and resentment, had already fallen into the demonic path. She appeared in the Yun residence and killed all 87 lives of the Yun residents. Yun Chuqing, who had already married into a noble family, was naturally not spared. Yulan had killed her 2 children right in front of her and ended her life. Yulan, who had committed such a crime, was unable to escape the majesty of the heavenly Tao during her 100-year tribulation and disappeared. In fact, Yulan was originally a cold moon orchid that was hard to come by in 10,000 years in the Penglai immortal Tao. If she had been absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on Penglai Island, she would have been an exalted immortal after transforming. Even in the heavenly court, she would have been one of the best among the flower immortals after transforming. However, she had encountered such a thing. Therefore, after she died, Gu Xingyin came to her body before everything had happened. However, it seemed that His Highness Sage King's purpose in bringing her along was not simple. Gu Xingyin had no way of probing into his mind, but she had an extremely sensitive perception. Unlike the lovers in the previous world, Gu Xingyin could see the appreciation in his eyes, but in the deepest part of his eyes, there was a thick coldness that could not be melted. Perhaps it was because he knew that Gu Xingyin had a special ability, but Yuan Rui never let random people get close to her. He even accompanied Gu Xingyin for her daily meals. To the outside world, the Sage King's explanation was that his junior sister had come out of the Carefree Valley to play with him. Everyone knew that His Royal Highness Sage King had once been apprenticed to the mysterious Carefree Valley. The people of Carefree Valley were eccentric, so no one doubted his words. Gu Xingyin also played dumb with him, dutifully playing the role of a qualified flower fairy who knew nothing about the world, waiting for him to reveal his purpose. In fact, everyone in the Sage King's mansion was very interested in Gu Xingyin, the legendary disciple of Carefree Valley, but they had never had the chance to meet her. Yuan Rui did have his own purpose. He was good to this little flower fairy with a strange origin, just for his own selfish desires. But he didn't know that after doing too much fake acting, it would become real. After a long time of hypocrisy, perhaps sometimes he himself couldn't tell whether this hypocrisy was real or not. Chapter 647. Your Highness, Miss Yulan's talent is rarely seen in my life, a dignified madam said to Yuan Rui in pleasant surprise. She was the zither master that Yuan Rui had invited for Gu Xingyin. Yulan was born with an immortal wood body, transparent and flawless. She could understand things like zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting with just a little bit. Every teacher that Yuan Rui had invited was full of praise for her. After sending off the female teacher, Yuan Rui walked into the courtyard. The woman, still dressed in white and wearing a flower crown, was sitting there elegantly playing the zither. Her fingers were skillful, and waves of distant and moving music flowed from her fingertips. When she played to her heart's content, she even closed her eyes and gently raised a smile, as if she was immersed in it and enjoying it. Yuan Rui was unconsciously stunned. This kind of woman, this kind of woman. He came back to his senses and remembered his purpose. He remembered his years of forbearance and revenge. His eyes instantly became cold. Yulan. He called out to her gently, his eyes filled with tenderness. The zither music stopped. Gu Xingyin happily opened her eyes and looked at him. You came. Her mind was as pure as a child's. Her thoughts were completely revealed on her face. However, this expression made Yuan Rui's eyes darken. Didn't you always want to go out and play? I'll take you out to play today, okay? He asked softly. Gu Xingyin instantly widened her eyes. Really? She had been in the Sage King manor for many days, but Yuan Rui never let her go out. He said that there were too many bad people outside and he didn't have time. It was not safe to take her out. Seeing her like this, Yuan Rui unconsciously revealed a smile. Really? When the prince wanted to go out, the servants of the manor naturally quickly prepared the things. Gu Xingyin was asked to change her clothes. According to Yuan Rui, the clothes she was wearing looked too unusual. If she went out, she had to be careful. Gu Xingyin naturally wouldn't be tangled up in this kind of small matter. For many people in the manor, this was the first time they saw the little junior sister that the prince spoke of. What a beautiful lady! I'm afraid that even the #1 beauty in the Ming Kingdom can't compare to her. His Highness has yet to marry and is so good to this junior sister. Could she be our future princess consort? Gu Xingyin listened to their voices one by one. When they entered the carriage, she suddenly asked, "What is a princess?" Yuan Rui was stunned. "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" Gu Xingyin blinked. "I just heard it." Yuan Rui recalled her unfathomable ability and understood. He explained, "Wang Fei is His Highness's wife. My wife is Xian Wang Fei." Gu Xingyin softly repeated the word wife. Suddenly, her face turned slightly red. "I know what the books say. A wife is someone who will spend the rest of her life with you, and will never be separated, right?" Yuan Rui nodded. "Then can I be your wife?" Yuan Rui looked up in surprise and saw this little flower fairy looking at him with expectation. Her face was red, and her eyes seemed to be hiding a pool of water. He was moved for a moment, but then he remembered his own situation. He hardened his heart and only smiled softly. "You don't understand at all. There are too many things needed between husband and wife." Although Gu Xingyin didn't understand those twists and turns, she could tell that Yuan Rui didn't promise her. She suddenly became depressed. Chapter 648. Fortunately, her mood left as quickly as it came. Not long after, when she saw the bustling crowd outside, the lively and novel scene immediately attracted her attention. Yuan Rui ordered someone to stop the carriage, and the two got off in the downtown area. Gu Xingyin was like a child, looking here and there. From time to time, she would take something she was interested in and leave, not knowing how to pay. Yuan Rui resigned himself to his fate, and followed behind her as a money bag. She was delicate and beautiful, and her clothes were gorgeous. Those peddlers knew that she was most likely a noble, so they bragged about their things, fooling her with a few words. "This is so sweet, do you want to try?" Gu Xingyin put a bite of sugar-coated ha in front of Yuan Rui's mouth. "Try it." Yuan Rui looked at the sugar-coated ha and felt a bit strange. No one had ever treated him like this. No one would. And no one would dare to give their food to His Highness the Sage King. But looking at Gu Xingyin's pure and happy expectation, he was shaken for a moment, but he still obediently lowered his head and took a bite of the sugar-coated ha. A strong sour taste spread from the tip of his tongue. "Ha ha 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 ha, I lied to you, it's so sour." Gu Xingyin laughed like a kitten that had stolen a fish. Yuan Rui helplessly looked at her, but he was reluctant to spit out the sugar-coated ha. He didn't feel sour, it was very sweet. The two separated at noon. Gu Xingyin seemed to have endless energy, and she didn't have the slightest intention to rest. Soon it was night. The Ming Kingdom's capital was lit up everywhere. Many of the peddlers packed up and went home. More snacks and fun things appeared on the street. The night market came out. Gu Xingyin couldn't stop playing. Until Yuan Rui called her. "It's late, I'll take you to see something, then we'll go home." "What is it?" Gu Xingyin's attention was immediately attracted. Yuan Rui smiled. "Let's go, I'll take you to a place." The place he was referring to was the high platform of a restaurant in the city. "There's nothing fun here." Gu Xingyin looked around. There were only a few chairs and a small table. There were not even a few stars to be seen tonight. Yuan Rui smiled. "Raise your head." Gu Xingyin followed his words and looked up. There was a deafening sound. She was shocked at first, but soon, she was attracted by the thing that appeared in front of her. Large and gorgeous fireworks bloomed in front of her eyes, falling from the sky with long and beautiful tails. Gu Xingyin stood at a high position, and some of the little tails even fell beside her. She was so happy that she wanted to use her hands to catch them. But she found that when those beautiful little things fell into her hands, they were just a bunch of dust that would be blown away by the wind. But there were even more beautiful fireworks in the air. "It's so beautiful." She turned her head and smiled at Yuan Rui, who was standing behind her. Yuan Rui looked at the woman in front of him in a daze. She had a face like a flower, slim and elegant. Behind her, there were brilliant fireworks. This kind of scene, this kind of person, he thought, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. At this time, Gu Xingyin suddenly walked towards him. Then, she gently kissed him on the cheek. I read in a book that humans use this to show their love. Chapter 649. Yuan Rui, I like you, she said. Yuan Rui couldn't hold back and tightly hugged the person in his arms. The two people, under the backdrop of the fireworks, hugged each other. It was the most romantic thing. But Yuan Rui's words were not romantic at all. Don't like me, Yulan. After a long time, he said. Gu Xingyin had been playing for the whole day and was a little tired. At this moment, she was about to fall asleep. When she heard him speak, she only responded in a daze. Seeing her like this, the worry that had just risen in Yuan Rui's heart immediately disappeared. He helplessly revealed a smile, picked her up by the waist, and returned to the Wang Fu. Starting from that night, something seemed to have changed. Yuan Rui appeared more and more in Gu Xingyin's courtyard. Gu Xingyin was no longer like before to amuse herself. When she was alone, she would look forward to Yuan Rui's arrival. When she saw him, she would be overjoyed. She would talk to him about the songs she liked, and hope that he would stay with her all day. Yuan Rui felt like he was crazy. He shouldn't be like this. He knew very well what his goal was in bringing this woman to the Wang Fu. But his heart was moved. Your Highness, don't forget what our goal is. His confidant advised him. These people all knew of Gu Xingyin's existence, but they had never seen her before. Because of her ability, Yuan Rui didn't dare let them see her. Yes, he had more important things to do. Yuan Rui thought of that person's flower-like smile, and fiercely closed his eyes. Gu Xingyin hadn't seen Yuan Rui for 3 days. On this day, when a servant girl of the Wang Fu was preparing food for her, she asked, why hasn't Yuan Rui come? In the entire Wang Fu, only she dared to call him this. The servant girl had become familiar with her these days, and was very fond of this junior sister of His Highness. She smiled and said, Miss, our Highness is about to take a secondary fei. He's a bit busy right now. Take in a secondary consort? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand what he meant. However, the maidservant left after laying out the dishes for her. His Highness had said that this Miss Yulan did not like crowds, so they were not allowed to disturb her. After the maid left, Gu Xingyin lazily replied, System, help me check. She had played dumb with Yuan Rui for so long. It was time to look at the script. The system told her everything. Even though Gu Xingyin had made some guesses from Yuan Rui's words and actions these days, when she really knew the truth, she couldn't help but sigh. The lovers in this world are really scum. If she really was Yulan, she would probably have to enter the demonic Dao again after encountering such a person. Gu Xingyin was used to having a lover who loved her wholeheartedly and obeyed her every wish in every world. Suddenly meeting such a lover, the feeling in her heart was really very subtle. However, subtle was subtle. Gu Xingyin expressed, she was angry. Since she was angry, if she didn't ruthlessly torture a certain person, there was no way to make her happy. Yuan Rui, who was talking with his trusted aide, suddenly felt his body turn cold. A bad feeling spread in his heart. What was going on? He was confused but didn't care. Chapter 650. Half a month passed, and Yuan Rui forced himself not to go to that small courtyard. Today he couldn't take it anymore. Before he entered the courtyard, he heard the sound of a zither. It was different from the leisure and joy of the past. This zither sound was filled with a faint sense of worry. Yuan Rui's heart tightened. She too. Would she have any worries? He couldn't help but quicken his steps and see the person in the courtyard. She was still wearing that pure white robe, but in Yuan Rui's eyes, that person seemed to have lost a lot of weight. There was a slight sourness spreading in his heart. Gu Xingyin noticed him. You're here. Her eyes were filled with joy as she quickly ran in front of Yuan Rui. I'm going to take a secondary concubine. This was the first thing Yuan Rui said to her. Gu Xingyin's smile froze on her face. After transforming for so long, Yuan Rui had invited many famous female teachers to teach her. She knew everything she needed to know. For example, What did it mean to take a secondary concubine? She cried. Yu Wenrui was a bit flustered. He had thought about how she would react, but he didn't expect her to cry out like this. It wasn't a loud cry. Her tears rolled out without any warning, as if they wouldn't stop flowing. Don't you like me? Gu Xingyin asked. Yu Wenrui was speechless. How could he not like her? He liked her so much that he wanted to change his initial thoughts and keep her by his side. But he couldn't. He had prepared for this for so long. He couldn't let go of his long-cherished wish. Since he couldn't let go, then the one to be let go could only be Gu Xingyin. His voice was a bit hoarse. Yulan, I will have a secondary concubine in the future. I will have a primary concubine. This has nothing to do with liking. The flower fairy's mind clearly couldn't understand this. She only knew that being with the person she liked was the happiest thing. There was nothing better. But humans were different. In their hearts, there were too many things more important than this. The two parted on bad terms. Yu Wenrui left in a sorry state. He felt very despicable. He had never thought of himself as a good person, but this was the first time his heart ached for hurting someone because of his despicable actions. But in the future, he would do even more despicable things. The things sent to the small courtyard were still the most precious things in the mansion. But Yu Wenrui rarely came back. One day, an uninvited guest came to Gu Xingyin's courtyard. Gu Xingyin recognized her. She was the #1 beauty of the Ming Kingdom, Yin Chuqing, who would also be the Xian King's concubine. She knew why Yu Wenrui wanted to take her as his concubine. The Yin family was the wealthiest in the world. Although their status as merchants wasn't high, their wealth was comparable to the national treasury. Behind Yin Chuqing was a large group of attendants. She arrogantly said to Gu Xingyin, I'm here to meet the little junior sister that our prince has hidden in this courtyard. Her tone was full of disdain, as if she wasn't talking about her junior sister, but a shameful mistress. The attendants behind her also sneered. Gu Xingyin looked at this woman coldly. Who are you? Her tone was flat when she spoke. She was just sitting there leisurely, but Yin Chuqing felt that she was showing off to her. A maid beside her said, Our family's young miss is the Yin family's eldest miss, the Xian King's future secondary concubine. Oh, future secondary concubine. Gu Xingyin emphasized these words. She was not surprised to see Yin Chuqing's face turn green. If you want to put on airs, enter the mansion first. Come back after you become the primary concubine. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.